I'm noticing that Jerry Bruckheimer and Disney have this talent of taking ideas that sound completely ridiculous and half-baked and somehow make them surprisingly entertaining. First we had Pirates of the Caribbean, now we have National Treasure. The story? Get a load of this. Apparently our founding fathers weren't just trying to make this nation a free nation, but they were also hiding this ancient treasure. That's right, a giant treasure that they believe shouldn't belong to any one man. So they left clues in all their giant landmarks and, of course, only one crazy treasure hunter can actually locate it. He's played fittingly enough by Nicolas Cage, who tries to tell everybody that there's a treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence, and big shock, they don't believe him. But he's being chased by a villain played by Sean Bean, who surprisingly doesn't die in this movie, I think that's a first, who's trying to collect the treasure for himself while Cage is just doing it to restore his family name. Along the way, there's car chases, shootouts, a romance, a comedic side character, all that good stuff. So I'm not gonna lie, I was really ready to hate this film, especially from watching the opening. I was laughing out loud at how absolutely absurd this all sounded, but as the movie went on, you kind of realize it's meant to be absurd. But not to the obnoxious point where it's always winking to the camera, it still takes it really seriously, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. It actually reminded me a lot of the new show Sleepy Hollow. Yeah, that idiotic setup where the Headless Horseman has a machine gun. But you find yourself actually enjoying it because they do take their stupidity so seriously. And at the center of it is Nicolas Cage, and he is the reason this film works. I think with any other actor, this film would have died. Nobody could find that exact balance of kind of kooky but kind of serious at the same time as him. The way he talks about these ridiculous ideas, he knows it sounds insane, but he's not really rolling his eyes. He's sort of just stating the facts and saying, will you help me or not? But he's not a stick in the mud either, he's still a little kooky. That's very tough to pull off and still have people want to follow you, but he does a really good job. I also like the fact that they really do spend time trying to figure out how to find the treasure. They sit down, they talk, they discuss ideas, they talk about codes. You actually do find yourself getting really wound up in it. If anything, the most boring parts are the action scenes. They're just sort of standard and you've seen them a million times, but it's like the movie knows they're kind of standard, so it doesn't spend that much time with it. The main focus is on the mysteries and the puzzles and trying to find the treasure. And it's strangely really fun and you get into it. I'd say that if you tell yourself there's no way you're gonna like this idea, then it's gonna be exactly that, an idea you're not gonna like. But kinda like with the Herbie movies, if you have even the slightest interest or the slightest wiggle room, my guess is this movie might win you over. And I also like the fact that you really forget it's a Disney film. The way they talk, the way they act, you don't associate it with that typical kind of Disney way. It just feels like a straight up action flick that's enjoyable and kind of goofy, but not in a Disney way, in its own sort of unique way. Even the climax is not this big overblown climax, it's actually a very reasonable, smart ending. So yeah, I surprisingly recommend it. If you have a good sense of humor or just looking for a bit of fun and not to take anything too seriously, but not have your intelligence insulted either, then this is a good rent. It's got just the right amount of fun, the right amount of goofiness, and the right amount of action. Go ahead and discover it for yourself. Why is it sequels always feel they have to do the exact same thing they did in the first one? They already did in the first one, why would we want to see it again? National Treasure 2 almost falls into that trap. There's yet another treasure they have to find, and there's yet another bad guy who wants to get to it first, and there's yet another controversy that they have to clear their family name over. As if that wasn't bad enough, we have our main characters who now lost all the money they got in the first film through some really dumb explanation. A scene where Nicolas Cage has to win the girlfriend over again to convince her of this crazy plot so they can fall in love again. And to make that worse, we have to do the exact same plot with Jon Voight and his ex-wife. That's repeating a storyline from the first one twice! But the good news is, when the mystery and the action does start, it gets fun again. When the characters are all together and trying to figure this all out, it's great, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's still just as goofy, it finds more landmarks to find these secret locations in. There's more puzzles, more silly quests. And there's more trailer fodder. Like, remember in the first film when he says, "I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence"? Well, now this one is, "I'm going to kidnap the President of the United States." Yeah, scenes like that are groaners, and anytime they try to recapture the setup of the first one, it fails, and it's stupid, and it's pointless. But, again, like the first one, when they try to focus on the actual treasure hunt element, it's still a lot of fun. It's still goofy, it's still silly, but you still find yourself getting wound up in it. Ed Harris is a good bad guy, that's Helen Mirren as the mother, and yeah, even though they have her and Jon Voight complain a lot, when she's not doing that, she's a lot of fun. I just don't get why they have to separate these characters and start them at square one again when you don't really need to. Why couldn't they keep the money and use some new devices to find this stuff? How come nobody believes them again? Wouldn't it make sense from the first film to believe this guy, that maybe if he sounds crazy he might actually be correct about it? But there's still some really good, decent scenes. For example, there's this moment where the president is left alone and, like he said, he kidnaps him. But the conversations he has with him are actually kind of fun and engaging. I really enjoy the dialogue where he talks about the importance of his ancestors and his family name. I think it actually does it much better here than it does in the first film. But it pretty much leads exactly where you think it's gonna lead. They find the treasure, they even sort of reveal the treasure in the same way with lighting the torches. The treasure kinda looks the same as the first film. But I'll admit, for the puzzle elements and the adventure and the journey, I still kinda like it. I can't bring myself to actually say don't see it because all the stuff that was good in the first one is still good here. At least when it comes to the treasure hunt. Everything else, man, it's not needed. In my opinion, you could just cut out the first 20 minutes and go from there. But you gotta take what you got, and for what we got, I think it's okay. It's not a bad follow-up, but not the best either. Give it a rent and find out for yourself.